On standby to ferry bodies recovered from the wreckage of AIrAsia Flight 8501. 6 bodies from the flight have been recovered so far, including 1 flight attendant, according to Indonesia's search and rescue chief. We have the very latest as the tragic search goes on tonight, some 60 miles from the plane's last known location over the Java Sea. This is on the crash of Flight 8501. I want to begin with reporters in the region now. Gary Tuckman is in Surabaya. Will Ripley is in Beijing. I'm going to start with you, Gary. Gary, the very latest on the grim search and recovery right now.
Don, the search is horrifying. It's very sad, but officials say they have what they need to continue it right now. There are about 30 planes and 40 ships on the Java Sea right now looking for the bodies of passengers. As you just mentioned, at least 6 bodies have been recovered, including a flight attendant. They know that because she was wearing her flight attendant uniform. The problem right now, though, is you have very bad weather conditions. It's very cloudy, it's very foggy. I actually just got off a plane. I flew here from Bali, another Indonesian island, and it was very hard to see. It was very windy. There's a lot of turbulence, and you see what they're dealing with on the sea. So what's very important to know is this water is not more than 100 feet deep. It's very shallow. So after covering lots of plane crashes over the years, nothing's ever easy. But this is one of the more stable situations in the sense that they know where the plane is, and the water is not very deep.
Yeah, but still, as you said, the weather will definitely impact the search efforts. But Gary, the question is, some of the families of the passengers and the crew saw bodies being pulled out of the ocean on live television. How did that happen?
Yeah, what happened was, and this can't happen, it's no one's fault, but local TV here in Indonesia was showing the search and rescue live, and it just so happened that the camera moved in and there was a body there, and indeed, this is the area of the airport where the families are, right behind me in that door. That's where they're waiting right now. And we've seen this a lot over the years too. TWA Flight 800 in the 1990s at a hotel, the families were gathered, and it's always such a sad and traumatic place to be, but they were in there watching it on TV, and a couple of women fainted when they saw that because they knew that the hope that their loved ones were alive was likely over when they saw lifeless bodies being pulled out of the water. It's just so sad. And ultimately, Don, with these families, we're being told that as early as today, maybe tomorrow, the families are going to be moved out of here and taken to a nearby hospital where the bodies will be brought when they're recovered from the sea.
That was my next question. So they're being held here, but they're getting information from where the bodies are being recovered. Explain to us the flow of information. How does it happen? They go out, the rescuers or the searchers go out, they come back and get information, and then how does this happen?
Don, if you asked me a question, it was a little hard for me to hear. Can you just repeat that again? Your voice was coming in.
So where you are now, the families are there. The searchers go out and they get information and they get bodies and what have you. So how does the flow of information happen? How does the how do the families get information where you are?
Yeah, so what's happening is officials go into the family room and give them updates whenever the family members want it. And the question that I just asked the airport manager a short time ago is, what is the main thing you're hearing from the family members right now? And they said, the main thing we're hearing over and over again is, bring me back the body of my loved one. And I said, do any of them still hold out any hope that perhaps they got a life preserver and floated away and are alive? And he told me they don't think that. They just want to see the bodies of their loved ones.
Understandable. Gary Tuckman staying by. I want to get to Will Ripley now. Will, the USS Sampson has arrived to the search area, and the Pentagon says another is being prepared. What's the latest that you're hearing from there where you are in Beijing?
Yeah, the U.S. joining this multinational effort now to recover the people who were on board that plane and continue the search also for the debris and whatnot. The Chinese Navy and Air Force has committed resources. But I wanted to touch on something that you brought up earlier, Don. There's a huge level of interest in this story around Asia. This is front page news on all of the papers, and it's also been covered extensively, not only on CNN, but a lot of the other regional networks. And one of the regional networks that broadcasts all over Asia, including here in China, Malaysia, Australia, Japan, the Philippines, they were simulcasting that live signal from local TV in Indonesia. So potentially those graphic live images of bodies went out to a number of different countries, potentially millions of viewers. And certainly here in China, where there are a lot of MH370 families following this closely, Don, very upsetting to see that kind of thing.
You have been speaking with members of MH370 families there. What are they telling you?
Well, it's a very difficult time. This whole week has been traumatic for them in many ways. It almost brought them back, Don, to the day when Flight 370 disappeared. I was sitting down yesterday with Stephen Wang, whose mother was on the plane, and he was telling me that he was hoping for a miracle. He was hoping that perhaps some people in the AirAsia flight might be alive, because almost 10 months later, Don, he still believes that his mother may be alive. He hasn't been able to speak her name because he says, she's not a victim. I can't accept that she's a victim until I have proof. And it was during our interview, Don, that we learned that the bodies were being recovered from the AirAsia crash. Yet that son that I spoke with and so many others in this part of the world still don't have any answers about Flight 370.
Gary Tuckman, Will Ripley, thank you very much. I want to bring in now Eric Van Sybille. He's an oceanographer at the University of North Wales in Sydney, and also David Susi, CNN safety analyst, and the author of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. The reason I asked Gary that question about the flow of information, because this family saw that on television, and I'm wondering if there is a difference now since that happened, getting information to them.
Well, I think
they've got to be careful.
They do, and he pointed out real well that there wasn't an intent with what happened here. There wasn't some kind of media monger that was trying to get this on air. It was just, it happens at an accident scene. It's almost impossible to film an accident scene without having something like that.
Yeah, you have to have sensitivity when it comes to this. Eric, you're an oceanographer, so tell us about this area of the Java Sea and the water conditions there.
Yeah, so the Java Sea, where the search is now going on, is very shallow. It's shallower than most of the Great Lakes, actually. It's not really an ocean, it's an inland sea. And for instance, 20,000 years ago, during the last ice age, this was forest. It's a really different environment from where, for instance, the search of MH370 has been. It's also very different from where the Air France and the Atlantic Ocean went down. But the problem that the search team is now facing is the monsoon season. This plane couldn't have gone down in a worse time of year almost. There's really big winds, there's choppy waves. These shallow seas are notorious for just their complicated waves and their very steep crest. It's really hard to work in. The other thing is that the rain brings down all this sediment, and the sediment floods into the ocean and makes it very murky, very muddy and hard to see. It's not very clear water anymore, and that makes it much more difficult, of course, to work in this kind of water.
Yeah, and Eric, you know, it isn't exactly a remote area. There's heavy shipping traffic that happens there, fishing. Many people live nearby. On the coast. What impact, if any, will this have on the search and the scatter of this debris?
Yeah, well, probably the biggest impact of it is that we will see a lot of debris being pulled out of the ocean that turns out not to be of the plane, because this is a filthy part of the ocean. Like many other of these enclosed seas where there's not really a current flushing things out, plastic, fishing nets, all the other things that are man-made and that go into this ocean, they linger around for months to years. And I think what we will see is that there's so much rubbish going to be collected out of the ocean, and more often not than yes, it will be from the plane.
So, David, let's see, the number of victims has grown to 6 now. The latest 3 victims retrieved from the sea are 2 men, 1 female flight attendant, and yesterday 3 bodies, 2 adults,